Welcome to the SALT Sideline Report. I am Leanna Haakons, and we are here at SALT New York with Bob Diamond, the CEO and founder of Atlas Merchant Capital.
Leanna, how are you?
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us today. You're a man in high demand, and we're lucky to have you at SALT New York back in real life.
Well, it's not just back in real life. I have not been to a conference like this since December 2019, which you may recall was the SALT Abu Dhabi.
Yes.
So I give Anthony a lot of credit that he was the last conference I was at, continents away, and here today in New York City, one of the first people to really do something to bring people here together. And I spent last week in our offices in London, the first time I've spent a week in London also since that trip in December of 2019. So I certainly feel like the world is beginning to open up slowly,
Right.
And to great benefit, I think.
So Bob, of course, you've been in the industry for many decades, former CEO of Barclays, lots of time in London and in New York, helping companies come to market or looking at different ways for them to access capital and liquidity. We're living in a time right now where SPACs have been a vehicle of opportunity for lots of companies, many of them IPOs. We're at a record year for IPOs this year, direct listings. You're talking on a panel here at SALT about all of these different ways to market for companies. What do you see going on in that space moving forward with the SPACs and direct listings and other opportunities?
I think we have a good perspective because our focus, our strategy is we're investors in financial services in the key economies of the US, UK, and Europe. We always think about our specialization and our focus recently has been much more on fintech rather than is it a fund investment, is it a SPAC investment, is it an IPO, is it maybe a credit investment? And we have access to all of those. So for us, when we look at SPACs, it's clearly has some disruption right now. I would say without question, SPACs are here to stay. Good competition for IPOs. I would say they will continue to evolve. I would say for investors like Atlas Merchant Capital is the sponsor of Concord Acquisition Corp, which is announced one SPAC and issued a second. Strong sponsors want strong regulation. So the focus on consistent, practical regulation we think is a positive. Mm-hmm. And then lastly, Leona, I would say that what's become clear to me is that the single name kind of celebrity SPACs are probably a thing of the past. I think money was flowing a little bit too freely. And the proof for that will be, can they execute a successful merger and then actually contribute to the growth of that. And I think platforms like Atlas Merchant Capital, which are focused on financial services and not just SPACs, that have a real investing platform across a key sector, will continue to have success in this area.
And so within financial services investments at Atlas, the different deals and opportunities that you look at for your investors, what are those different areas that you see that are exciting for the end of 2021 and 2022 going forward out of our post-pandemic world?
It's a great question. We are so excited at the opportunities in financial services. And, on one side, you have the legacy banks, legacy financial services companies that are a lot more today like utilities. The returns are more utility-like, regulations more utility-like, management's more focused. They're very, very safe, but with buffer upon buffer of capital, not the most agile and not the most competitive in some of the new areas. So our recent announcement of a merger with Circle, which is USDC, US digital coin, stable coin, digitized currencies coming alongside the advances of the internet and blockchain, is so exciting in terms of our ability to compete with kind of the soft underbelly of some of the traditional businesses in commercial banking. So we also see, in some of the more traditional businesses, while the US banks and the US legacy institutions have probably outcompeted the European and UK banks since the financial crisis, we're seeing a big difference in valuation. So it's a question of whether now is the time to be investing in Europe and the UK. And I think keeping an eye on what the regulators do to allow more financial innovation and more of the things the US has done in terms of making it a really deep, rich capital markets. I think there's a real opportunity if those two things come together to make some pretty good money in Europe and the UK as an investor.
And of course, that is the real question around when we were starting to talk about the digitization of the banking world and using blockchain technology and how regulation is going to play into that actually becoming viable opportunity for investors like Atlas Merchant Capital. It's interesting to see someone that has been in the traditional side of banking, of course you have been for many decades, now really considering and taking active management to be involved in the blockchain and this digital space. Like, it must be so interesting for colleagues you've worked with so many years to say like, wow, Bob's getting into blockchain? I mean, it just must be so interesting for everyone that's worked with you all these years.
Well, I think the important thing is Bob is really enjoying it and really finding
And
it
Bob,
challenging.
of course, himself.
Exactly. And you know, the opportunity with obviously we've had the speed of the internet for a while. We're beginning to have real digital opportunities and currencies. And then the advent of blockchain and many of these platforms is allowing us to question why we need someone standing in the middle of the banks and the credit card companies charging 2 to 3 points. So the ability to move money commercially,
Right.
instantaneously, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, securely because of the advances in blockchain and driving the cost to zero, it is really exciting. And I think this isn't going to be an overnight sensation, but we're right at the cusp of some real innovation here.
Well, we are so happy to have you here at SALT this week talking about some of these technology innovations and ways that companies are really coming to market and able to get capital through these different vehicles like SPACs and direct listings, IPOs. We're so happy to have you here. Thank you so much, Bob.
Very welcome. Thanks for having me.